On today's episode, we talk about a new challenge from Apple for all the photographers out there, at least if you have an iPhone 13 Pro or Pro Max. Sorry, everyone else. And to talk about that, we also talk about macro photography, tips for macro photography, including macro photos that we've taken recently, and a little shorter version, maybe for YouTube, of this program that'll make it a little bit easier for everyone to see. That and more on the iPhoneography podcast.
It's January 31st, and welcome to the iPhoneography podcast. I'm Greg McMillan, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dave Podner. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Greg, how is it going today?
It's going very well. In typical Canadian fashion, weather, mild, still have snow.
Oh.
That's about it. Yeah, actually, it got up to about -3 Celsius here today. So would that be about 27,
20s,
26?
Probably upper 20s. So
yeah,
we were around the same. We've had snowpack for the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to hit 40s. So we're going to be above freezing for the next couple of days. So everything's going to start melting, and then we're going to have a front come through and give us rain, sleet, freezing rain, snow in around the 12-hour period.
Yeah. It's probably going to be somewhat like that. Somewhat similar here too, but
giant mess.
Yeah, it's winter. We deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we are excited about this episode because we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is macro. And actually, this all stemmed from an idea you had to talk about the latest shot on iPhone campaign that Apple's putting out. So I'll just let you take it away.
Oh, thanks, Rick. Now, this is unfortunately only open to the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max users, mainly because Apple has built in the macro ability to these cameras. So it runs through mid-February, through the February 16th. Winners will be announced in April sometime. Basically, there's two ways to submit it. You can post on Instagram or Twitter. My suggestion would be using a program like If Then Then That, because if you notice, if you post to Instagram and you hit the little button that says post to Twitter, it puts a weird thumbnail and it doesn't exactly copy well. It doesn't work. It doesn't work as well as my mind it should. Mainly because, of course, Instagram owned by Facebook, Twitter being independent, they don't play well together. Using a program like If Then Then That, I have it set up to where when I post to Instagram, it automatically reposts the full image with all the hashtags and all the text to Twitter, and it looks like a native post on Twitter.
Yeah, and there's snippets in the If This Then That app for that purpose.
Exactly. So you don't have to do coding.
Right.
That's the nice thing. You don't have to do the coding. It says, "Oh, I want to do Instagram to Twitter on a single photo." Boom, download it. You have to sign. You have to give If Then That you have to basically say, "Okay, here's my Instagram and here's my Twitter and here's my Facebook," to let everything talk to each other. They've been around long enough. I do trust them with security, at least enough, as much as you can trust any company. They've been around long enough, and I've heard people I trust have no problem with them. So, definitely a good thing. Or you can just do the manual thing and post twice. So you want to use the hashtag shot on iPhone, which hopefully if you're already posting to Instagram and Twitter, which we had a brief discussion earlier before the recording started about our little, Instagram and Twitter and how they're handling photographers, not as nice as they used to. But if you're posting already, you should already use the hashtag shot on iPhone. Yeah. But for the challenge here, you want to do that hashtag and the hashtag. It's hashtag iPhone Macro Challenge, all one word pushed together. So if you do both,
we'll put them on the screen for the YouTube. If this part makes it to YouTube, I'll explain that later. Yeah. But yeah, we'll put it in the show notes too.
Yeah, and it's information's on Apple's website if you want additional details too. If you want to go through the legalese boilerplate. Now, of course, you can also email Apple to shotoniPhone@apple.com. Honestly, I would post it to social media versus just emailing it to Apple. And I have it set up where I have a little note on my iPhone that has some of my commonly used hashtags. And one I always use is hashtag shot on iPhone. So I just copy, paste it in an Instagram post, make it easier. Just, we got enough stuff that we have to do. Remember, make things easier on yourself. So if you do a macro shot, use the 2 hashtags, and of course, any other hashtags you want to. Apple will, have their bot kind of skim it. They'll pick 10 winners. It'll be featured in a gallery on the Apple Newsroom, their website, Instagram, and their other social accounts. Now, I know at one time, I don't know if they're going to do. I didn't think they. Oh, actually, you know what? I do see also the note here. May. So if you're one of the 10 of probably the millions of photos that people will do, it may also appear on digital campaigns, Apple Store locations. So if you're really lucky, when you go to an Apple Store, there's your photo blown up on a wall as you're walking in, or billboard, or a public photo exhibition. So even if you want, I would say use it, just because it's an easy way to not only get your information, get your photos out there, but you can also search on Instagram and Twitter I wouldn't necessarily do hashtag shot on iPhone because you're going to get tens of millions of answers.
Yeah.
But if you do the hashtag iPhone macro challenge, just do a search on that, because you will see what other people have posted and maybe get a little inspiration on what they did. And you can see, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, that's an interesting edit. Even if it's nothing you won't necessarily want to do, it still gives you a nice inspiration of what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that before. Yeah. Like, if you want to see what other people are shooting with your particular phone that you have, so a lot of people hashtag iPhone 12 Pro Max, for instance. Like, I do that all the time. So if I want to see what other people are shooting with that phone, have a look, and definitely, I think the biggest reason, Dave, like you said, is inspiration.
Yeah, and honestly, it's also, even though let's say you don't have the 13 Pro, so you can't necessarily do the competition. There's still apps like Camera Plus 2, Halide that have built-in macro modes. You can get snap-on lenses that will allow you to do macro, even relatively inexpensive snap-on lenses. Not necessarily the $5. I mean, you can try the $5. They're not going to be great lenses, but it doesn't hurt. Or in the $15, $20 range, which is relatively affordable. And give the macro a chance there and see what you can do. Because yes, it's really nice how Apple has that built in, but just because you're not on the newest of the new, or you may even be on the newest, like Ruth has the 13, the non-pros do not have the macro built in. Mm-hmm. Only the pros do, but she can still do macro shots using another app or using additional hardware. So in those photos, we've seen photos all the time that are from 5-year-old iPhones, iPhone 7, iPhone 6s, because the physical hardware hasn't changed a lot yet in the last half decade. Computationally, yes. Other parts, yes. But the main camera has not really gone by leaps and bounds by the hardware. So you can take amazing photos with older equipment. That's the great thing about iPhone. Hey, I have a 4-year-old iPhone and I can still take great photos. So I would say, even if you can't do it and you can't necessarily do the challenge officially through Apple, challenge yourself by trying to do some macro modes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures, like, speaking of older phones, I think it's right on the Artful IPC group on MeWe, where people have been putting pictures on. I'm pretty sure I saw one on there from an iPhone 6S, and it still looks pretty impressive. Maybe it was taken back in the day, but whether it was or whether it wasn't, it's still an iPhone 6S, and it still looked like a good picture.
Yeah, most definitely.
So the campaign is, like Dave says, it's for 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max owners, and um, I really wish I had that 13 Pro Max now, because I don't know. I'm such a big macro fan. While I'm at it, quick update in the book. No news yet on when it's going to be done. I got to get a hold of the publisher again. I know I said this last time, and I'm going to email them tomorrow and find out when this is going to happen. So
yeah,
hang in there, folks. So that takes us to I mentioned earlier about whether this is going to make the video portion of the show or not. Quick little announcement, I guess you could say. I'm going to not put the whole recorded show on YouTube now. It's just going to be the stuff that actually has visual content, because I think trying to get people to sit down and watch two people just talk on YouTube, it's just not going to work. So Dave and I are going to do our normal stuff. The whole thing will be on audio, but the video content for the YouTube channel will just be what you're about to see here, which is photos that we're going to look at, and maybe talk about tips and stuff like that. But then that's going to be probably it for the YouTube channel. Hopefully it will be a better experience for everybody, and I think that's the way to go. So we're going to try that out and see how it works. So now we move on to the proper video portion of the show, where we're going to look at some photos, and this is also going to tie into some macro stuff that you'll see here shortly. So Dave, you got some pictures that we're going to look at first,
right?
And I will put them on the screen here. There we go.
Okay, so this is this was taken during a walk at lunch, and yeah, now this is portrait mode. You can tell it's portrait mode because the part where the ice starts to go away, you notice that the portrait mode had a little issue with the twig part. It kind of gets blurry and it goes away there. But honestly, I was walking back and I looked over, and it looks like some kind of monster out of the Godzilla movie.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
It looks like a giant praying mantis of some type. And this is just the leftover ice after a couple of days of melt and refreeze as it's coming off of the end of a branch. Now this was portrait mode. This was also using the 3x portrait mode. So because the tree was in a middle of a grassy area, but that grassy area had a bunch of snow in it. So I was around 10, 15 foot away. So I needed the zoom to actually get a decent crop. And I did some editing on top of just taking the photo too. So the ice in the original photo didn't look this translucent, but when you looked at it with your naked eye, it did look this translucent. Mm-hmm. And just it honestly, it looks like in my mind, a piece of ice sculpture.
It kind of does, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It does, yeah.
And honestly, the way it looks like leaves, or not leaves, it looks like feathers almost. Yeah. The way the ice is coming off. And
because this looks like it could be a wing with feathers.
Yeah.
And then the tail in behind here. Like, you really have to use your imagination, I'm sure, but yeah. I see it.
Yeah, and it was, like I said, the head, and it looks like you have a head on top.
Yeah.
Like an insect head. So it's just one of those shots that, honestly, you don't get unless you have your camera on you. I don't want to say all the time, because it makes me sound like I'm an addicted person, but, going for a walk at lunch, I don't know how many people are going to be, oh, I'm going to carry my Canon or my whatever, or, I'm not saying people don't. You may be taking your Fujifilm camera because you're like, well, I'm going to go for a walk, and if I happen along something, that's great. But the fact that it's just like, okay, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, and boom, picture. And like I said, I wish I could say yes, and I did. Basically, this is what was seen.
And the funny thing is if you'd have walked another 4 or 5 feet one way or the other and looked at it, you wouldn't see it
From
like
this
we do
angle.
now with
Mhm.
where, with the wings and the tail and what looks like it could be a head or whatever. Like it just wouldn't look the same.
Yeah. And if you
And
look
it
on
might
the
not be, it
no.
might not be as effective.
No. And if you look on the upper right, you can see the cleared off branch. So it was only the tip of the branch where there was ice on it. The rest of it was melted and clear. So it was just one of those weird things that just happens when water freezes and stuff happens.
Yeah. And it looks to me like the wind was probably blowing while it was doing that too, because that caused it to,
In one
go out like
direction
that.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Okay. So your second photo, back here. There we go.
Okay. Now this is one that I actually took last night. We actually have a little break in the clouds. And I'll say, and this is something I've said a couple times, is that the Hallmark movies and Hollywood movies lie to you about winter. For people who live where there's not snow. No. You do not go out and have wonderful clear snow and beautiful clear skies. No, I'm sorry. Maybe some places do. But most of the time, if you have snow, you have white overcast clouds. So the fact that the clouds were breaking up at night, so I was able to do a night photo here. But I was also able to go because I thought it was a good photo, but nothing popped per se as much as I wanted to. So I did go in the polar, and I did do a little bit of the brightening up and getting a little more intense with the blue and a little more intense with the browns and the orangish browns of the trees. But I also added in what looks like snowflakes here in terms of the flares they have. And the green, I guess it's supposed to be an aurora borealis there, but it almost looks lens flare-ish like. So I added that in also. So this is
kind of looks like a light leak sort of.
Exactly. So this is kind of a combination in my mind, it's a combination of a picture and I hate to use the term painting. It's not really painting, but extra enhancements to a photo where, adding additional things that definitely are not there. And it did not look like this when I took it, but I thought it had a nice feel to it.
Yeah.
And you can see cool. In the snow, we've had some visitors, as you can see the footprints in the snow.
And you know what? When I first saw this, I almost thought that I thought for a second that those were stars, and I didn't realize that they were like snowflakes that were added on until I got looking at it a little closer and realized that a lot of them are in front of the trees, like especially on the left-hand side there, you can see them. Yeah. That's cool. So now we're going to move on to this one.
Right. Now, this is a macro mode taken with the built-in app. Oh, there we go. This is the unedited. So this is just taking the photo as is. This is with the ultra wide. So this is with the 0.5. This is a wicker table with a glass top that's on my porch. And the snow was not melted on the glass part. And honestly, I don't want to say a lot of care, but it was just a matter of me hunching over and taking the photo. And the fact of how clear you can see the individual snowflakes / crystals are. And you can see the individual. Now, this is a plastic wicker table, but you can see that where it's kind of bent, where it's already starting to kind of crack a little bit. And you can see the segments of the plastic being shown there.
Yeah.
And this is,
like you say about the snow, it brings the texture out in the snow.
Yeah. And now this is one thing because I did take another macro of just the snow part. And it's still, but the problem is it didn't have a contrasting color or texture. So all you saw was, and honestly, it looked like static. If you see old TV, old images of static on a TV or something, because there was nothing to say, okay, here's what, like here you have the brown to go with the white. You also have the different textures of the wicker going with, because if you notice a lot of the macro photos, they will definitely zoom in on a subject or a part, but there'll be a contrasting, like if you look at a bee or something, you'll have the contrast to the flower it's on.
Yeah.
But you just can't say, oh, I'm going to take a picture of this up close. Maybe it's a leaf or a blade of grass or, fur on your cat or dog without that secondary texture
element.
or exactly. So that's one thing when you're thinking about taking macro photos, think, okay, I can get in nice and tight. I have this beautiful image here, but what else? What can I do to make it pop a little bit more? And of course, that's where also you can get into editing. And so I use Polar a lot. A lot of times I'm using Pixelmator Pro to do some sharpening and some other correcting, and then I'll throw it into Polar to get a feel. So this is Polar and just a little bit of sharpening here, a little bit more of an unusual color. So I popped the color a little bit more and just making it straight brown. You can see some greens coming in. I want to say I may have used, I'm trying to remember what the thing's called. Fringe, I think it's called, where it kind of separates the color into kind of multiple channels and just physically separates it a little bit. So I think I did a little bit on that on here.
Right.
But again, you can see like kind of the difference between the snow and the wicker and kind of the border between the two. So you get something interesting happening, and you get, like I said, it does act as a border, the wicker kind of going around. So as you're taking your macro photo, you still have to not only think about, well, macro, can I get it sharp enough? Can I get it clear enough? But I still have to have a good outline of what's going on. And still keep all the, normal photography ideas as you're doing macro on top of it.
Yeah. So now we have a little added bonus to this, where Dave did a screen recording of how he took this shot. So I will share this, and here's how Dave went through the process of getting this shot.
Hey everyone, ignore the barking dogs as we try some macro shots. Now, I'm just going to use normal camera, bell there, and I'm going to try to take a macro shot of I have an iPhone 13 Pro Max, any of the Pros, either the Pro or the Pro Max, either one's fine. Notice as I get closer, all of a sudden things are going to, did you see that little movement right there? So right now it's in macro mode. And you need relatively good light, but notice, now if I hold it still, I can either do the Winex, or if I want like wider field of view, which, you could want like right here. Now, one thing about the iPhones, especially the 13s, you got to give it a couple seconds to, normally not that bad, to do a little processing. You can see the details here on the macros. And I kind of like this one a little bit better. And you can see like the individual parts here of the plastic wicker. And you can see the individual snowflakes. Pretty nice how you can do right there. So quick job on just how to do photos without any editing. Of course, you can do editing and do some adjustments on it afterwards if you want, because it's just a normal live photo. Thanks so much. Talk to you later. Bye.
And there you have it. Yeah, so that's a really good illustration of how macro works. If anybody hasn't seen it before, and as far as that, taking time for the picture to process and res in, I'm finding that on my 12 Pro Max in the Apple camera. I don't know if it takes halide that long. Reflex, it takes a little bit, but I'm shooting ProRAW all the time, so that's probably contributing to that. But I noticed you were not using RAW on that one.
Right.
Can you do ProRAW with macro on your phone?
I do not know. Well, you look at your
have
photos.
A homework assignment.
Well, you know what? While you're going over your photos, that's something I can test.
Okay, sure.
I believe you can. I think the delay on mine was also because I was doing screen recording at the same time.
Right.
So
Yes,
not
that will
so
do it.
that would take a lot more, in terms of horsepower, you know, uh, you know. So I can see that taking a lot more. Oh, I'm doing a screen recording, and by the way, oh, now you want me to work on a photo at the same time. Okay, I'm going to take a second instead of a half a second. I
Yeah,
can see
yeah,
that happening. So
yeah. All right, very good. And thanks for providing that screen recording, because that's really helpful for folks who, maybe haven't tried out macro mode on their 13 Pros yet. But so continuing on in our recent photos segment, I should have said that at the beginning of it all, but I'm going to continue on with the macro shot, and this has got a kind of a funny story behind it, but this is a stink bug, and I don't know how this thing got into my house last week, but my wife found it sitting on the freezer, just on the top lid of the freezer. And I'm thinking, there's no way. I mean, I don't know how it got in. I have no idea. And because I don't even think that it should be um, around this time of year, unless the only thing I can think of is that I was at the grocery store earlier that day and it came in on some broccoli. I bought broccoli, and that's the only thing I can think of. But when my wife washed out the broccoli, she didn't see it. She didn't notice it. Maybe it jumped out before we unpacked. I don't know.
Those things are everywhere. Seriously, and they're everywhere. And this is the time, fall and winter are the time, at least in the last couple of years, they have overrun. Now, admittedly, this year hasn't been as bad. But I do remember a couple of years ago, someone had a picture and their entire side of the house were covered with stink bugs.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't, other than if you go older than 5 years ago, I don't remember ever hearing about stink bugs around us. And then all of a sudden, they're everywhere. I found one in our house, and it's like, I have no idea where it comes from. Literally, it's ugh.
But I mean, I haven't seen one since probably late summer. But my wife was going to smack it with a fly swatter or something, and she says, before she did that, she says, "Is this a stink bug? I don't want to kill it if it's going to stink up the place or whatever." So I got it on the fly swatter, and I flung it out the back door, and it was like minus 18 degrees out. And I'm thinking, well, if anything, it's just going to end up dying in the cold. And lo and behold, in the garage, a couple of days later, it was inside the garage on just a curtain that covers the back window. And there it was sitting there. And I'm thinking, oh, this can't be like the cat that came back. So I go up to it and I took a screwdriver or something and I just kind of touched it a bit, and it didn't move. It was obviously dead. It frozen to death. So what do? As one does, you get it on the screwdriver and you take it out in the snow and you have fun with your macro lens. So I took a bunch of shots with it with the macro lens, and that in the top left-hand corner of the image is just a little sprig of a cedar leaf for scale. And I cropped a little bit out because I wanted to emphasize the bug. But my lens, because it was so cold, my lens was fogging up a bit, so it kind of gives the photo a bit of a surreal look to it. But I used my Struman macro lens on this one, and so yeah, that's one of the shots that was on my camera roll in my recent photos from this past week. So this one, this is what happens when you get off work on the night shift about 2/3 of the way through your shift, and take a drive around town when there's nobody out. It was freezing cold again, and I just went down this alleyway, and I took this same shot years ago with my Canon camera. But at that time there was more snow. There was more snow on the steps, but I thought, no, I'm going to revisit it anyway and take the shot and see how it comes out. Night mode, probably 3 seconds, maybe, I don't know, but it was just in the car, windows down, took the shot and carried on. And I just thought it was kind of a neat way that the shadow from the stairs reflects on the wall and whatnot. So,
oh no, definitely. And I like the fact that if you look directly behind the staircase, the pattern, the brick changes a bit. You have a little section there vertical, which I'm guessing may have been a window at one time.
That's my thinking, Dave. That's
that
kind
was
of
filled
how
in.
yeah. I mean, and this building will be, gosh, I would say early 19th century is probably when it was built.
Okay, that makes sense.
Not 19th century, sorry, early 20th century.
Right.
Keep forgetting we're in the 21st century.
Early 1900s. Early
Yes.
1900s. That's
Yes.
nice way. Yeah, we don't want to be the one people who say, well, for those of you born in the late 1900s,
yeah,
people who are in their 20s who are born in the late 1900s.
Yeah. But it's an old building. Let's put it that way. And but yeah, so that's what it looks like to me. Is that it possibly from a window or something? That's the only thing I can think of, is that there was a window there or something, and that could have been the top of the window, maybe. But either that or somebody was just having fun doing brickwork. So it's hard to say. But so then finally, this was just another. We had about a week or two of really, really, really cold weather, and this is in a little town that's probably about 20 miles away from here, on the same bay, that Georgian Bay, that I live on, that my hometown is on, and this was looks like an old remnants of a dock or something that it just got covered with ice from the waves and whatnot, and then the fragmented ice in the background. And this one here, I used Reflex, the camera app Reflex, to take this shot. And you know what? I'm really liking that app. I'm using it more, and it's coming along. And they've got a really cool release coming up too. While I'm at it, I'll say that. And that I'm not sure when that comes out. It's 1.4. And they've also, here's a little tidbit for everybody. The folks at Reflex announced on Instagram today through a story that they've got some lenses coming out. And so that's obviously got my attention peaked a little bit. So we'll keep you up on that as we learn more. So, so that's, excuse me. So that's what I've been shooting lately. Not a whole lot really, but it's been cold. It's almost been too cold to go out and walk around looking for stuff to take pictures of. But that's been on my camera roll lately.
Yeah, I mean, the ice picture is nice. I mean, it is a real good feel for, first of all, how clear it is, and just a real feel for it. You look at it, you feel cold.
I was getting cold, I tell you. I took about 3 or 4 pictures, and by that time, I was ready to get back in the car because my fingers were getting almost numb. It was so cold. Like it was I bet you it was minus 18, minus 20 Celsius. So I don't know how that translates into Fahrenheit, but boy, that was some cold. And gosh, was there anything else we were going to talk about, Dave?
Well,
I can't remember a conversation from an hour ago.
No. This was it. This was it. But also, you were going to ask, can I do RAW with their macro mode? And yes, the answer is yes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So,
do you think you'll be trying that, or just to see if?
That's one thing I was just trying there, and honestly, I don't know how much of an advantage it would be, to be honest.
Right. Yeah.
Just because it is Apple's ProRAW, so they're already throwing their magic on top of it. And I'm not using like Halide. where it's not raw, but or even Halide's using their own brand of magic.
Mhm.
And, and of course, what I mean is the computational photography and the other things on top of it.
Yeah, like the deep fusion and all that stuff.
Exactly. And there are other fixes. So honestly, a couple times I've tried ProRAW, I haven't noticed a huge difference. And it just could be I'm not used to shooting it and I'm not used to the editing you need to do. But the JPEGs that come out, I mean, I know a lot of people say, oh, you can't recover a lot of the lights and the darks as easily. It's partially me accepting the limitation of the fact that I'm using a camera phone. And there's only so much you can do, but also it's like, I'm happy with the way it turns out. Where other people are like, oh, I use RAW and I get these wonderful things. I'm like, I'm glad it's working for you. I don't know if that would work for me. So honestly, I probably won't unless it's something that's really, really out of the ordinary, or I'll shoot both. I'll just take a shot, maybe,
and that begs the question for me: why am I?
Shot again.
Yeah, that begs the question for me: is why am I shooting ProRAW all the time? Because the ProRAW looks like the JPEG, and for Pete's sake, if I'm not
if you're editing, or I would say if you're editing it in something that really handles raw files well, and you can do you can save maybe an overexposed or a completely underexposed, I can see doing that. But for average shots, which are taken in pretty good light, unless you're heavy into the editing part of it, which I know some people are, or you're like, oh, I take a photo and then I dump it into my Mac and I go into Adobe and I use my, I spend, $100 a month on the Adobe Creative Cloud. So I get all the extra stuff that Adobe gives you, and not just the photographer or the free part, but you're serious. Yeah. If you're a casual photographer, I'm not seeing a lot of advantage of it, especially if you're not going to spend a lot of time in the editing part.
Yeah. And my editing is not like Photoshop editing, Right. I just enhance my photos. So you know what? I'm going to challenge myself, Dave. I'm going to challenge myself to shoot JPEG or hike, probably hike maybe, because it's just as good, but less smaller file size.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go from now till the next podcast, and I'm going to see if there's at all any time where I smack myself in the head for not shooting ProRAW.
I wish I could. Now, the one thing you could do, if you don't mind double photos, take the photo, hit the button, hit the RAW button, and hit the photo again, and hit the button again. Because switching from RAW and not RAW, it's literally the button on the screen. So you could do both and then just work on the JPEG. And if it's like, oh, I really, this isn't working or that isn't working, but because I hate to say, here's a shot that only happens once, like the ice photo I took on the tree.
Right, yeah.
Where I couldn't go back the next day and get the same shot because it's nature and it changes and it may have fallen off. There may be more ice. It may have this. I know I took that on a Wednesday and I go to work Monday, Wednesday. So I wouldn't go back to work for, 5 other days. So,
right. And we're getting warmer weather. It's going to melt away and then it's lost. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say do both, but only work on the JPEG and see if you notice a difference or not. Like I said, you might not, especially since you're, like I said, you're not going to hit it heavy into Photoshop and do all this stuff and boost this up there and boost this here and do this here,
Yeah. All right. Challenge accepted.
There we
go. Okay. Well, okay. As far as tips go, got a macro tip that you can think of offhand real quick, or?
Honestly, a lot of it is just be careful with your lighting, because so many times when you're doing macro, you are close and you may make your own shadow.
Yes, definitely.
Because I've actually did other macro shots where I used the 3x, and it may not be 100. It may not be using the 3x lens because of how Apple decides internally what lens to use, and it's up to
Hmm.
them. And there is no override built into the base camera app. So if you hit 3x and Apple says, "Oh, it's too dark to go 3x," we're just going to, do a digital 3x zoom and we'll fix it in post. There's nothing you can do. But sometimes you can't get that close because you're literally you're literally a centimeter, you're a couple centimeters or an inch, depending on, what's I know, same distance depending on what you're used to saying. And you're that close, so you're going to be blocking light. So be careful on your light there. That, I think, it's the biggest thing. Like, the photo I took was in the day. That had There wasn't a direct light. The way my back porch is, there's a roof over it, so I wasn't going to have direct sun casting a harsh shadow.
Hmm.
And we still had a half a foot of snow on the ground, so tons of reflection from all that snow. So I wasn't really that concerned about light. But if you're taking a really, really close photo and there's like a heavy source of light behind you, your body's enough to cause light. So you may have to twist yourself around, move yourself around, try different angles.
Yep.
You have to be extra cognitive of the light.
Case in point with my macro photo that we looked at of the little stink bug. I was getting really close to it. It was an overcast day, and I had to really be careful of my angle of approach because the lens and the camera, the lens and the phone and whatnot were actually shading the bug over, and I was not getting a great shot. So that's a great tip. For my tip, I would, and I'm going to go with macro too. A macro tip here as well. If you are fortunate enough to be able to use the okay, actually, question for you, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do burst mode with macro mode on the iPhone 13 Pro Max?
You know what? Give me 1 minute here and I can tell you. So let me go.
I'm so glad you got that phone.
Okay, we're going to go obviously macro here, and then well, hold on, I gotta figure out. Okay. I'm trying to remember how to do burst mode.
Volume up button.
Let me try that. Let me try, just because I don't use it that often, and I'm using
Yeah.
the old way of doing it, where you just hold down the button, but it's making me go to quick video.
Yeah. So what you do is you tap and hold it and slide it one way or the other. I'm not sure which way to do burst. If you want to use the shutter button that way.
Yeah, and it's not letting me do it. No, it's giving me video to do.
Go the other way.
It won't let me.
Okay.
So
and did you try the volume up button?
Yeah, I did, and it lets me take photos. But if I press and hold down, it goes right into video.
What about the volume down?
I will tell you in a second. I'm deleting all the things I have here because I don't want to save it.
Yeah.
Okay. That exact same thing, actually.
Okay, so it must not do burst mode then.
Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to clarify that with the 13 Pro. So this tip is going to be for anyone that's using like a, well, I guess it would still work with the 13 Pro and Pro Max, but only if you had an attachment lens on the phone to do macro. And the reason I would want you to try burst mode is because with those lenses on, there's such a shallow depth of field that I always make it a habit of approaching the subject and then activate burst mode and then just keep firing until I kind of go into the focus of the subject and then maybe a little bit past it. And then I go back and I pick out a keyframe that has the best focus for the subject. So that's my tip, is to use burst mode when, and it's available in Camera Plus too.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the native camera app, and it may be available in some other camera apps. I'm not sure which ones. Camera Pixels may have it. I know it has. Camera Pixels has focus stacking, but the problem with that is that you need focus stacking software on a computer to process it.
Okay, and the answer is yes, you can. You can do burst mode for macro.
On the 13 Pro?
Yeah. Like I said, I have not actually taken any burst mode photos. Mm-hmm. So when I pushed and held down, it shows you the little circle going off to the right to show the little video recording, but doesn't show you can go left. There's no visual clues on screen. Right. And when I first started to move over, it was just kind of looked like it was wobbling, but you have to throw it hard to the left and and so I just did it, and I got 30 photos here.
Oh, excellent.
As part of the burst mode. So you can use burst mode. I don't know if it's depending, like I said, what I had wasn't moving. I was trying to take a picture of my keyboard, so it wasn't like I was it's like a moving flower or something that would move that would be like, oh yeah, this is obviously, it's going to be hard to just get the exact shot here. So I'm just going to take a burst mode to at least guarantee I'm going to get one here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's the whole purpose of using burst mode in macro is to make sure you get at least one shot. Mm-hmm. So that's good. Well, thanks for clearing that one up, because I was almost disappointed that you wouldn't be able to use burst mode in macro mode on the 13s.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense you could do that. So
yeah. All right. Well, Dave, I think we got ourselves a show.
Yep, most definitely.
So tell everybody where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter as ProfPod. You can find me on TikTok, which I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm putting up there, but I am putting up stuff there as Dave Podner Jr. Instagram, pretty much mostly photography. Starting to use Reels a little bit more, just because that seems to be what Instagram's pushing. And you got to go where the eyeballs are. Even if you may not like it, you got to go where the eyeballs are. And Twitter, just general information along with photography.
All righty. Well, you can find me on Instagram at Macmillan Photo, Twitter, Macmillan_photo. And let's see. Well, you could find me on Flickr. Just look for my name, and tell you what, go to about.me/Macmillan, and that's where you can find all the links to all the places I'm at. So this podcast lives at iPhoneography.ca, and the YouTube channel for the audio listeners is we'll just go to YouTube and type in the iPhoneography Podcast Network, and you'll find us. And again, we're going to put a somewhat shorter version of the show on YouTube, just because the visual stuff isn't the whole episode. So audio listeners, as you have hopefully seen by now, the images that we talk about will appear on your screen while we're talking about them in the enhanced version of the podcast. It works on Overcast, it works on Pocket Cast, it works on the Apple Podcast app. Does not work on Spotify, I don't believe, but most of our listeners, I think, according to the numbers, are on the Apple Podcast app. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, Dave.
Have a great one.
Yeah, you're muted, Val.
I was muted. Yeah.